I have I've exited out of the waiting room, so anyone else who's joining from this point will just catch us as we go. But I'll kick us off. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Abby. I work for Netwealth, who are obviously the company that's run by Barry Cranford, who's the founder of the London CTOs. We obviously run a range, as RecWorks, we run a whole variety of different tech communities, and the London CTOs is just one of those. We are a tech recruitment company, but we believe that recruitment can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. From our perspective, if some people want to learn and others want to teach or share knowledge, then we are more than happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. We've run over 700 events for engineers and developers, students, graduates, CTOs like yourselves. We run conferences, lightning talks, hackathons, all sorts of things. We've also made over 3,000 introductions now between mentors and mentees in our Meet a Mentor program. We love opportunities, obviously, to hear people's thoughts, and that's what this event lends itself really well to. The roundtables are great for hearing your opinions and thoughts on different topics. If you would like to know more about any of our communities, do get in touch with myself or with Barry, and we can obviously take it from there. As I'm sure you know, the London CTOs are sponsored by Skillsets, and I do have a short video from them to play you this afternoon, and at which point I just hand straight over to Chris and he'll kick us off with the roundtable. So here we go. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Hi, I'm going to talk to you about Skillsets. Skillsets was founded by a London CTO, me. My name's Howell Carver. I wanted to find a better way to identify and fill skill gaps in my team. And so this company was created by me and another CTO to address some of the biggest pain points that tech leaders face today: the cost of hiring, upskilling your team effectively and efficiently, and retaining talent. Targeted capability coaching is learning that's core to how an engineering team operates, not a fringe add-on or an afterthought. It's learning that aligns with business priorities and changes what the team is capable of. And that's how Skillsets works. Skillsets training is personalized to each individual and their training needs, so that nobody has to learn something they either already know or don't need to know for their work. Our coaching is delivered live by an expert in the technology that you require to small groups of your team, typically 5 or 6 people maximum. Each individual is coding in their own normal work environment and is learning hands-on through challenging code exercises supported by that expert. So what that results in is an approach to learning that is live, that's interactive, that's problem-based, so that people are learning by doing and solving hard things, and led by experts. We offer training in languages, runtimes, libraries, tools, DevOps technologies, from things like React and React Native, TypeScript on the front end, to back end things like Go and Python, as well as Postgres. The way that we work is, firstly, we do a detailed skills analysis, which is going to give you a high-level view of individual strengths and weaknesses, as well as a granular breakdown topic by topic, so that you can see where skill gaps are, both individually and across the team. The second step is to create personalized learning plans for each individual on the team by looking at the identified skill gaps and your current priorities. And that ensures that time isn't wasted learning things that either don't matter to you or that the team already knows. We then schedule sessions flexibly that go straight into individual calendars. That's proven to increase attendance rates because joining a meeting needs less convincing than the idea of attending a training session. And then last but not least, we work with you to measure the impact that training has on your team and on the company. If it's code quality you're looking to improve, or if it's junior developers becoming seniors, or features being built 4 times faster, or tech debt reduced, we want to help you demonstrate a measurable improvement for the team and for the company as a whole. we've worked with a bunch of CTOs based in London before at companies like PensionBee, Accenture Analytics, and WageStream. And we have an exclusive offer. So we're partnering with London CTOs. We're offering the skills analysis for free, as well as a reduced price proof of concept training for any member. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you for your time there, and over to Chris. Go for it.
Hello. Well, firstly, thank you all for turning up. I appreciate everybody's time is valuable, especially this time of year when we're getting into appraisal seasons and trying to plan for Christmas and stuff. A tiny introduction. I'm Chris. I'm the CTO at a company called Netwealth. I joined at the very start about 6 years ago. I was employee number 2. Since then, we've raised about 38 million in funding, and we're up to about 50 people headcount now, half of whom are in engineering. So that helps me sort of frame, I think, the first of these 2 talks. So I think if we scope it to going from 0 to that sort of, I don't know, mythical 25 number, where you still probably know everybody, you've probably hired everybody, and you maybe still interact with them at least once a week, let's sort of say. If you turned up to hear me tell you how to do this, you're going to be disappointed. I'm far more interested in hearing what everybody else has to say and learning from other people. So you don't have to have done that 0 to 25 any point during that journey. And as far as sort of framing the things I'm interested in, there's a great book by a guy called Rob Fitzpatrick. I think he's Rob Fitz on Twitter. He wrote a book called The Mom Test, because he's American. Mum Test if you're English. And that was really nice. And it was all about how startups could talk to their users and ask some questions in a way that even their mum couldn't lie to them. So rather than, would you like this? Would you buy this thing if I did it? Turn it around and say, okay, what do you actually do? Do you do this? What did you do? So it'd be really good if the things we talk about are things that we have done, rather than, okay, well, the book suggested we do this. It might be an interesting tie-up if the book said that, but when you actually did it, it turned out to be not very good and you did something else. So I think things that we've done that were really good, things that had a really good impact during that period. Conversely, things that didn't go well, things that you did usually in good faith that had a negative impact or just didn't work as you expected them to. And then maybe a third one, things that you did, but maybe you wish you'd done them a bit earlier. But I think that one's a little bit vaguer because you obviously don't know what it would have been like if you had done it earlier. So I've got some. I can fill in gaps if there are any, but I'm really going to hand it over to people. I think we'll start with a positive one. So if somebody fancies kicking us off with, something positive that they did that made a really big difference during that journey.
Oh, all right. I'll go ahead.
Abby was right. I should just wait and let the silence linger, and then somebody would step up. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, silence is irresistible. So I've done the 1 to 25 once. I'm in the middle of doing it again. The first time I did it, I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And so it was fairly seat of the pants. Oddly, it wasn't here in the UK. This was actually in New Zealand, so your mileage may vary because New Zealand is a very small place and lots more network oriented than necessarily job board oriented. In that process, so I did a couple of things. One was I got heavily involved with community around development and engineering in order to make sure people knew who I was. I sponsored events, competitions, etc., for tickets and things like that. Those actually worked really well. I got some really good candidates through the door through that, and probably the best engineer I ever hired came out of that process. Things that didn't work so well was taking a punt on somebody. We were too small to support it, And it wasn't my gut feeling, but one of my engineers says this guy will be great. I went ahead and went with what he had recommended. My gut feeling said the opposite, but I'm always willing to let people make mistakes and learn from them. I learned from that one that one didn't work out so well. Would I do it again? Probably, because that's just a one-time thing.
So is that to do with technical ability or the less tangible cultural fit, let's say?
The less tangible, the cultural fit, the kind of those soft skills, the communication, the relationship building, just weren't there, and the person needed far more effort to get the same amount of output as the rest of the team, and the rest of the team ended up carrying them.
Joe, I just had a question for Jeff there. Was that person was that a personal recommendation by one of your team at the time, or was it someone you hired and you took someone's advice and opinion on whether they were the right person, or someone through a social connection?
Yeah. So it was somebody that came through the door.
Right.
And my initial scan was, I don't think so, but I'll let the team talk to him. And that person came through as being very enthusiastic about the person, and I went against my gut feeling. Again, look, we can always try and go by gut feeling, but that's not always scalable either. It's a really good talent if you have it, but if you don't, even if you do, at a certain point, that's going to stop being a reliable means of hiring.
It's quite hard, I think, especially when you're small. You don't have the choice of the market as to who comes in. I think maybe more compromises are made that you wouldn't make when you kind of get to a bit bigger scale.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
The reason that I asked that, because I was going to say one of the successful things is referrals. When staff have recommended, someone they've worked with before, and we've done that. I think we've done that 2 or 3 times. I mean, and about to do it again. Actually, I'm in a company of 37 with a dev team of about 10, 11. So that was the reason I was interested. If anyone had a personal recommendation that didn't work out, because in my experience they've always been.
I've had similar with the personal recommendations, and in fact it is my preferred means of hiring, because it's also a litmus test of your organization, right? Is somebody willing to bring one of their friends in to work for you? So if they are, then you're doing something right.
And people that have done that, have you externally incentivized that, or has the benefit of working with that person again been enough intrinsic value?
Not in my case. My organization is a non-profit, so we don't have we don't have a lot of money to splash around. So there was no bonus or anything. Yeah, which it's a good question. Maybe it's better not to, because it you don't want to overly incentivize perhaps, and it's just been because they knew the person was good and they were happy to have them join the team.
I think the only caveat
both on that.
Sorry.
So I've done both incentivized and not incentivized. One organization didn't have an incentivization program, worked fine there. Same with the other that did have a referral bonus. I didn't see a lot of difference. I got a little more activity out of the one that had the incentive.
I think Matt was going to say something there.
Oh, sorry.
By the way, Matt.
Something very similar. Just hi everyone. I work for a fintech in London as well. Kind of more in the retail banking space, but yeah, we've got an incentive program, and a lot of our staff have come through the referrals route, and I think all but one has worked out well, and obviously it's advantageous to us because we're not paying recruiter fees for them as well. So yeah, I really value that route, and I think if it doesn't work out, it often is perhaps team friction that wasn't anticipated in the wider extended team that often means that someone, the organization just isn't right for that person, perhaps.
So it's interesting that we started off with the recruitment side. I mean, clearly that's quite a direct thing that we need to be doing as CTO. I suppose it's quite hard as well, especially if you've never done it. How do you go about hiring people? How do you go about figuring out that this person should be hired and not that person, especially if you've gone into the role, which I think most people do because of their technical abilities. And now you're, okay, I mean, especially in the last 18 months, okay, now you're the hiring manager. Ooh, okay. That's definitely been, for me, that's definitely been a big upskill, how to deal with that so that everything else doesn't stop in order to keep hiring people. That's been hard.
I think sometimes as well, there's the bit that comes before you go to market, looking for people, is that first initial, you drop into an organization, you have to survey the landscape, you have to figure out what's needed. And sometimes, take a risk on, this is the set of skills we're going to need. Let's go and find our first developer who can help us build these things. And then start measuring, actually, did we get that right? Or do we need to start filling in the jigsaw somewhere else? And that's the scary bit for me, I think, sometimes is knowing what to take a punt on initially. Please tell me I'm not alone in that.
No, you're definitely not. I've as part of my history has always been coming in. I've been the first person there, but the majority of the time I've been the person that's been brought in after they've gotten to a certain point and need to grow. So yeah, that's pretty much every time.
And it's scary because
I've never been number one.
Sorry.
So no, I'm sorry, Chris. I've never been number one. I've always been sort of number 3 or something like that. And come in as a sort of manager, and then inherited a couple of lead developers who needed managing, which is a really difficult dynamic because you're coming into an established relationship, oftentimes with people who've got more direct skill in some area than I have, and then maybe they want to refer a friend, or maybe they want to bring in a team to support them, and you're sort of, because they're not your kind of choice, you've got to manage their existing relationships within the organization. Sorry, Chris, I interrupted.
No, it's right. I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Oh, more that it's, I think for the CTO position, if we talk about referrals, there's kind of that Donnie Brasco thing going on. He's a friend of mine. I am recommended him if he or she doesn't turn out very well. Okay, that reflects on me. I think as CTO in that stage, that's everything, because the rest of the business will probably not be able to technically judge whether these people are correct to bring in. So they kind of go every time, well, if you tell me they'll work out, okay, I'm trusting you. That can be quite hard.
And of course, yeah, if that doesn't work, it can hurt you.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Alex, as well. It is one of those things that, so I'm not a technically based person in Recworks, but I do help to source some of our team, not in Recworks, and yeah, I have a list of people now who've applied for roles before. They weren't quite right for one thing or another, but I know they would fit with the way Recworks works, and that's great. And so every now and again, I might make a recommendation for a particular role, and sometimes that's worked out and it's been really good, and sometimes it hasn't worked out, and that for me, it's like that's my misunderstanding of what we needed, or there's just something that needed tweaking, or there was just something that didn't sit right about that particular person for that role. And so we then obviously go through the usual kind of hiring routes as well in that sense. But yeah, it's really nice to know you've got people to refer for roles that you think actually they would work for this. That's really encouraging, isn't it? But at the same time, like you say, you do take that risk of actually it might not work out, and you may have to say, sorry, that was my bad. You know, let me see what I can do better next time to avoid this happening again. And getting that balance right is really tricky, isn't it?
Has anybody had a time when that didn't work out?
As in, you brought somebody in that was wrong and it didn't get happily resolved for both parties?
Yeah.
I mean, there were situations where we were hiring people and we've had a really hard time to find the right person for the job. So like our margin of when we decide this person is right got really in the side of we really need to hire someone, and we can kind of accept a few flaws here and there. And it never turns out to be right thing. Like we always, when we were in rush with hiring and we kind of skipped a few problems with a person, it always paid back as a problem, and it never was a successful thing. The other thing that kind of was a problem with recruiting where we were trying to recruit a person and they were like very okay in terms of when we use our common sense and looked at what they offer, etc. But during the interviews and when they meet the team, there was no chemistry, or no, like the team did not feel like there's a lot of, they have a lot of in common with them. And these were also like a problem. Usually these were the moments where we needed to kind of let people off because it just didn't work. So it must be like when we did not feel 100% confident that this is the right person, it never worked at the end.
Really interesting you mentioned the cultural piece there, because I find the cultural alignment of someone with the team is almost a better predictor of success than their technical aptitude. Someone who's motivated to learn, they might not know our tech stack, they might not know the industry, but they often come in and they do a lot better than perhaps someone who has all of that domain knowledge and almost becomes intellectually lazy, for want of a better word, because they feel like they can do it in their sleep. I've come to the point that I realize that an interview is often a good filter for people, but it's often not a good way of finding out who's really going to shine until you actually give them the opportunity to come in and succeed, or show you that they're not going to succeed, and that's a conversation you have after they join the organization. But I find that a difficult ethical dilemma, in that someone could be good, but do I want to bring them in and give them that, opportunity to demonstrate that, knowing that they may not be here in 3 months if it doesn't work out? It's quite difficult. You can't figure it out from a 3-hour interview, particularly over COVID when it's over a screen as well.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I remember a situation 2 years ago. It went spectacularly bad with, I think she was hired 4 or 5 in the previous company I was working for. And there was an increasing number of arguments between different people in the team. But what I found useful was to try to set up some kind of culture, some kind of making sure everybody respects each other, making sure there is some kind of implicit or explicit code of conduct, and trying to make sure that at the end, this is a decision you don't have to take. Like it just becomes a natural decision that makes sense to everyone, including the person who will be leaving. And that's what I was focusing on. So we didn't make the right choice, I think, in terms of hiring. But at the end, what was satisfying was that that person realized in the same time as the rest of the team that she was not effectively fitting in. And so you do an exit interview, or I did one with her, really be open about trying to figure out what was wrong with the interview process. Was it because we didn't manage expectations at the start, or what we could improve? And having this kind of open discussion at the end, serving every party, I think is quite good, because you feel good about it, the team feels good about it. It is not too much of a trauma or a drama for the team, and you can then just carry on getting on and finding the right person next.
That's actually really interesting, because we've had a couple of experiences in the last year where, you know, I joined during lockdown, other people have been hired during lockdown, and then when lockdown's been released and the business wants everybody back in the office, people have gone, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not comfortable with this environment. I can't be productive here. So this has been a really like acute and unusual case, I think.
So people found that engineers tend to value remote work more than non-engineers. I mean, I can lean on so many stereotypes here from literally from my dungeon. But yeah, it's interesting to sort of, well, so personally, we're in a hybrid company. It's moved more towards more people wanting remote, but from day one, I kind of said, I work remotely. This is, if I look on the things that went well, bringing that in from day one, it's clearly a lot easier than trying to bring it in X number of years down the line. But I think for me, there's still that tension between the people that are remote, people that are in the office, because they tend to be, people that work remotely don't tend to need other people to enable them to work. Whereas the people that want to be in the office kind of go, well, I don't want to be in there by myself. Obviously, lockdown's a bit of a different story if you've got kids at home, and but they want other people to be around there. And there's that sort of overlap of, well, no, yeah, other people don't want to be in there. So that's quite a tension point, I think. I don't know whether other people have found that.
I think it's about time management for me. I would much rather have engineers in my team who know what good looks like and are willing to put the effort in to do that, rather than assess them, you know, based on how many hours they're online or in the office or sat in their chair. Because, hey, I work in a startup, so the hours are 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. Monday to Sunday, right? Not quite, but I don't whip them that hard. But I'd much rather judge outcomes than than just like office attendance time. And I think people who can work effectively remotely, certainly in my team, they're the people who are still there, if they need to be late in the evening to fix something or get something done. But in the same way, I will repay their loyalty by making sure they get time off at a later point, which isn't always possible in an office environment. And I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to jump out because I've got another call, but I really enjoyed chatting to you all, and I hope to be able to do it again soon.
Nice to see you, Matt.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, Matt. I think on the remote side of it, my last two organizations were remote before I even joined. So it was, the first one was a learning experience, and now I'm building on that experience. One thing that I've found across both of them that is interesting is that the folks that are working in remote companies that actually would prefer, so far that I've encountered, who would prefer to be in an office have tended to be the folks in more need of mentorship and collaboration, being next to somebody. So the challenge has been teaching them how to do that via a screen or via a shared editor in some way, to give them that same, you're never going to get the same thing as having somebody sitting right next to you through a digital medium, but finding ways to allow them to get that mentorship, get that training and upskilling from other folks in the team is really important. And it's whether you're in an office or not, it's really important to make sure you look at that for the juniors that are bringing in. And this goes back to trying to build a team, because that is, you can't start with you can't scale with all senior engineers. First of all, they don't get along that well. They all have you'll never get a decision out of anybody if you hire all senior engineers. But you also have to train folks up to take responsibility and take on new remits within their work.
I have a question in terms of the seniority hires. Like, what's a breaking point in terms of that? Because if you ask me today with 3 people, like, I want as senior as I can get them, because they will be more independent. They will bring answers with them and things like that. Like, when does it become a problem?
I think you can look at it as an opportunity, because I agree. I mean, I'm the same. I tend to hire senior people initially, and maybe focusing on roles as well, so to facilitate discussions. If everybody has got a specific role, that makes it easier to manage. But then I found that just by conversations, by discussions, they will bring the opportunity. They will say, well, you know, I wouldn't mind having someone maybe a bit more junior in the team. They could work on this and that. So that opportunity is coming from your team. That's my personal experience from it. So it's just a listening exercise. That time will come when people start talking about, you know, the benefit of bringing some more junior people in the team, because it has got benefits, complementary benefits. And so it's just a listening exercise to know where it is the right time to consider that, from my experience.
Yeah, I've just got my first junior engineer in the team, and prior to that, I thought, this is great. I'm hiring all these senior people, and I'm getting away with it. You know, no one's saying to me you need to stop hiring senior people. I thought it was great, but I think after a while, as things, I guess over time things do get less exciting, and you get a bunch of less fun work to do. And with a team of all senior engineers, it's difficult to get people interested and motivated to do that. Whereas with a junior engineer, it's working really well, and there's a nicer balance to the team. So definitely,
I've found in the teams I've worked with, I've found when you get to about 6 to 8 is where that's a good spot to start bringing folks that are a little less experienced. So there's a couple of benefits. That one, you're adding skills to your seniors, right? Because you can't always give them additional tech skills because they've got work to do, but you can give them soft skills and mentorship and leadership. Number two, there is a cost to hiring all seniors, right? Your budget, your burn rate goes up substantially. If you can bootstrap them from a junior, then it's much more cost effective. You also don't have to unteach them bad habits and other elements that live in that. Yeah, I think it just improves your scalability as an organization if you've got that built into your culture. It is harder in a remote culture now.
So here's an interesting one related to bringing in more juniors. I think one of the main questions, or one of the main reasons juniors would join a company is, okay, how am I going to progress? Where are you going to get me to? So what experience have you had with making that a bit more formal? Yeah, making some sort of growth framework or progression ladder or something like that. And when did you do that? And was it early enough, or did you leave it too late to put something like that in? And that's generally to everyone.
I have done it. I've actually just rolled it out to the team that I'm on now, but I've done it at a couple others. 20 is too late, I can tell you that. I think I might be a little early now. We're at 10. So it's not really a need now, but everybody appreciates it.
You probably want to start before you start having an HR department in the company. So do that before HR starts taking over.
It also has a couple of additional benefits, right? When you go to do hiring, you have a set of expectations for your new hires. You know what you're looking for, and you've communicated that to your team when they're helping you with your hires. It makes, if that you've got that there, that also, when you're doing interviews, that you're not just interviewing them to see if they're good enough, they're also interviewing you to see what you've got to offer them. Let's face it, it's a much more competitive market these days. And if you have that in place, it is just one step or one other thing for you to give them confidence in your ability to grow them.
Okay, maybe I'll so if I give us a different steer then. So we talked about hiring a lot. It's clearly a big problem. You can't grow a team without hiring people. But I suppose what experiences, or again, the things that went well, things that didn't go well, related to how your roles have changed during that process? Because presumably we all kind of went in as the technical guru. We were the ones that could do the thing, but it gets to a point where you either can't or shouldn't be doing the thing anymore, and you have to move to something else. So I find that an interesting topic.
Yeah, I could mention something about this where it's kind of gone a bit pear-shaped. You know, I've been in roles where promised investment for teams didn't materialize, and so I've ended up being, you know, much more hands-on for much longer than really I should have been, which is really problematic, because you lose capacity to do the comms roles, to be the stakeholder manager, and to kind of build the wider platform, and that's really, really tough. And I think, just to link that back to bringing in those senior roles, that's why I think it's really helpful to at least start with more senior people, because you can start to offload some of those important, you know, more advanced development tasks to somebody. Otherwise, you just end up piling all the new tech on yourself, and it becomes very hard to dig your way out of that, I think, as you should be transitioning into a less kind of coding, hands-on, more leadership, you know, relationship management position.
What number did you get to when you stopped actual development work?
Well, it's never really stopped. I mean, I've been up to teams of 12. That's as large a team as I've had, and I've always been involved in some capacity in being hands-on. And that's usually because we're getting to a point where we need to introduce something new, and the team hasn't been confident to do that, and they've gone, "Hey, Alex, like, we want to do Terraform. How do we do Terraform?" And I've kind of made the first foray into that new tech and then handed it over to someone else. So those, like, you know, relatively advanced tasks that that are advanced for the team tends to be something that I end up shouldering, which is maybe a learning point for me to find a way of delegating that earlier.
I was going to ask that, have you found that makes you a bottleneck?
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. And I think that also comes back to, you know, can you spot earlier what the future techs are going to be, and then hire or train in advance of that actually coming up as a bottleneck? And I think, you know, once or twice, just haven't got that right, and ended up, you know, really being in the way of things for a few weeks.
I found that I was a necessary bottleneck at a number of phases where I didn't want to be, and I knew I was, but I was still at that stage where people outside of engineering would come and ask me the thing. How does this work? And you go, okay, well, this is, I suppose this is kind of where your authority comes from, the tech side, certainly in the early stages of being in a company. And you know you shouldn't be answering that, and you know you should be, look, it's not, go and talk to that person. And eventually they do. And then you go through this sort of, it's one of the many bereavements where all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, now they're not asking. I mean, they shouldn't be asking me, but they're not asking me these technical questions now. So I think that was, yeah, I found that challenging as my role changes, and you kind of go, oh, I quite enjoyed doing that bit, and I've lost that bit now, but I need to go on to this next bit. So yeah, I tend to be a bit sluggish at that as well.
So I've sometimes managed that by just saying, right now, person in the team, you are now the person responsible for X. You know, managing Snowflake, bam, that's now your thing. If anyone comes to us with a question, you're now responding to that. I'm here if you need me.
Sorry, my wife's just delivered me some really nice lunch. I'm going to try and eat it nicely whilst we chat.
What you got?
Sorry, Miss Abby.
What have you got?
It's like a cod and lentil curry. Yeah, it's pretty splendid. Sorry if other people haven't eaten yet. Make you hungry. was going to make a point then, and I can't remember what it was. Well, who has other stuff? Oh, thanks, Jeff. Yes, I think my wife knows Jeff, and obviously Matt Huxtable as well, so that was quite nice. I haven't met Jeff before, but I've met Matt a few times. Well, where else would we like to go? Lead me with some things that were kind of high on your agenda of big failures or big positives. Where should we go next?
So I guess a question. I've run across it a few times, but I'm wondering how other folks have dealt with or have even come across folks that have the hero syndrome.
Can you define the hero syndrome?
The hero syndrome, it's the person who kind of fixes everything, becomes a single point of failure and a bottleneck, and is very slow to hand over and share that knowledge because they enjoy that feeling of saving the day, right? So they'll write code that is incredibly, I don't want to call it good. It's incredibly complex and does really cool stuff, but it's very difficult for anybody else to deal with. And I'm having come across this a few times, I'm curious as to how other folks deal with that. Because I think this can impact on that journey from 0 to 25 quite often.
Is that because you think it's highly likely that that somebody would hire a hero into the team in that first sort of 25 people?
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, what have you done? What did you try in that situation?
What have I tried? So I've been successful in resolving it. It's a lot of it is you give them somebody to mentor. Has been really effective in that. The other is to start showing them how it's impacting their life, right? Because they generally tend to have a really poor work-life balance, and start talking to them about, right, so awesome, you've worked 5 days in a row, 9 to 9. This is a really great appreciated effort. Now I need you to take time off because there is a cost to that. The more you work like that, the more likely you are to create mistakes and silly mistakes that you know you shouldn't be making. That's sort of worked. Just a lot of it's really been trying to manage them as a person more so than anything else.
We've struggled because they look very, very good to the rest of the business.
Yep.
So it's very hard to, even if you manage to spot it, which I haven't a few times. Luckily, they decided for me, and they left for varying reasons. And then the sort of bow wake afterwards was so evident. And I had teams that all of a sudden just went and became productive and took ownership. And you then look back in hindsight and go, nobody was saying anything in meetings because they knew that other person probably knew the right answer. So at best, I'm just going to say what they were going to say. And at worst, I'll say something they disagree with, and then I'm, for it sort of thing. So yeah, so I don't think I've certainly not actively managed those situations.
I imagine that can be quite intimidating as well. If you're, for example, a more junior level, and you know there's someone in the room who will probably know the answer, and therefore you don't want to speak up, it's almost your job then, if you're the one leading the meeting, is almost to be able to go, okay, well, I know that they probably have an idea about this, so I need to remember next time I need to ask them their opinion, because if it's purely an opinion, it can then instigate discussion in order to hopefully come up with the idea that you need to move forward with, without letting for want of a better term, letting the hero be heroic all the time, maybe. But I don't have to do that in a working context, but it's just a theory I have that I think works. It's kind of similar as well if you've got people who are more shy in meetings and more introverted, you know that you need to say, oh, so and so, what do you think about this? Because that way, you know, you're going to get their engagement, you're going to get the best out of them because they know that you value what they've got to bring to the table, and that they're not getting lost in all the sound of people who are extroverted and able to communicate well and just say, well, I think this. It's that, again, it's all about the balance, isn't it, between how do you get the best out of the people you've got.
And I think that's absolutely spot on, and that's really key in remote teams to be able to identify those folks. It's critical that you make sure that you give up people who don't say anything the opportunity to speak by engaging with them.
So Jeff,
I find that makes.
Sorry, Alex.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was going to say I just find that you're absolutely right, and I agree with exactly what everyone's saying. Just open up the floor and give people room and space. It also makes meetings a lot longer online. Doing them online in Miro or something, a 1 hour meeting becomes a 3 hour meeting, which probably isn't a bad thing because maybe you're getting more engagement out of everybody at a pace that they actually feel more comfortable with. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No. I was going to ask back to Jeff. You said that one of the ways of dealing with that hero syndrome was to ask them to mentor somebody else. What was the reason behind that? Was that a kind of cynically you knew you needed to get rid of them, and that was a good mechanism to kind of expose these things?
Well, that's one way to look at it. No,
obviously we're not recording, so it's fine to say things like that.
No, I guess the thing that I found from that was it gave them the same kind of reward from that they would get from being praised for what they've done. That individual is looking to them for answers, kind of filling that same need. And it's you have to be careful that they don't become too much of a crutch for that person, but you need to help them express that need and in a constructive way rather than trying to make it a negative.
Gotcha. Okay, so it was a positive. Look, actually, you should be getting more reward by doing this thing.
Yep. And in fact, I have one right now who's very well aware of the problem, which is also rare. But I have also gone to another step of applying a different team topology to the group, where he's in a group of what we call our enabling team. And they're the ones going out, as you said, Alex, going out and learning the new things that maybe the rest of the team doesn't have time for experience in, so that by the time it gets to something we're building in production, we know enough about it. And he then takes a week with the team, shows everybody how to do it, and goes from there. He's got 2 folks that he's mentoring in that group at the same time. I'm kind of throwing all the fires at it just to see how well it works. So far, it's working brilliantly.
You really struck a memory with me there, Jeff, because that's exactly what happened with someone I worked with. He was in my team, and we coincidentally did almost the same thing, letting them be the point person to go off and explore new things and then come back and train everybody. They really enjoyed that. They really liked being the person being seen to do that.
Yep. Yeah, it worked really well in this case. We had a guy that he was a burnout mess when I got to him. This was right when I joined. He was ready to go find something else to do, and I said, give me a few weeks, let me see what I can do, and he's now back to, I'm not going anywhere.
I think my other experience is, I've worked in big corporations where the one of the pillars on which you are evaluated every year is, have you been mentoring and coaching people? And just having some incentive in there. We talked a little bit earlier, very briefly, about putting in place a progression scheme for people, but also in that recognition piece that you do every quarter, hopefully, you know, there's also this thing of like, who are you helping develop a business, you know, or outside the business, what are you doing to develop your skills in that area? And if you maybe have that as an integral component of your organization's culture, there's already a lever there that you can pull with somebody.
I like it.
Because I think a lot of places just don't have that as part of their reward structure.
It's an interesting. So I don't think anything we've spoken about so far has been what I'd call technical. Do we assume that, you know, we nail the technical? That's kind of the easy bit. The hard bits are all the humans around it and the interactions that we have with people, whether technical or non-technical.
I do think that's, for me, that's been the harder journey than learning a piece of technology. If I bang against it hard enough, I can learn it. But people, they just are not predictable.
They don't do what you want them to do all the time, do they?
No.
Outrageous.
I think it's a difficult job, but I've not succeeded all the time to create that role. But even with very small teams, very beginning, seed level kind of startups, bringing the role of a facilitator in the team, which is a very hard sell at the beginning, because tech, it is engineers from business perspective, from people outside of engineering. So we hire people to do stuff, and hiring a agile coach, scrum master, whatever you want to call it, someone whose job is to facilitate discussions, facilitate conversations, facilitate peer pressure, all this kind of interaction, which is very important. When I've managed to do that, it was a game changer, because if you join the company as number one, or if you join the company as CTO, you've got the weight, you are the manager, so you bring that weight into any meeting anyway. So having someone attending the meeting as a facilitator, playing that role, making sure that everybody speaks up, making sure dynamics are right, is invaluable. And it is a hard sell at the beginning, but I spend a lot of energy usually when I join a new startup to create that role as early as possible.
So what other sort of, let's call them ancillary roles, have people hired that have been good, other than the engineer?
Product owner as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, addressing the product side of the engineering component is often, you'll scale your engineering team, but not the product function, which means you tend to lose sight of what you're trying to do. You're outputting great technical stuff, but is it the right stuff? Is it the stuff the customers want? Is it overcooked? You know, how does the customer look at it? Because let's face it, we're engineers. Some of us have that skill, some of us don't. But it's not our main bread and butter. And having somebody that can take and have that view and help keep us focused on building the right things is invaluable.
We had very similar. Yeah, we the three people over whom the product owner role was split fought quite hard to go, I think there should be one person and not us doing this. And that was quite a hard sell, but that's been a really, as other people have said, that's been a really positive thing. I think on the flip side for us, a Scrum Master didn't work out well. I don't know whether that was the individual or whether that role just wasn't right for us at that time. We had much better results with an agile coach over a short period of time. That sort of intense, actually, I'm not kind of servant leader, I'm going to kind of come in and tell you what to do. for us, that really made a much bigger difference than the more traditional Scrum Master role.
Yeah, I share the same experience. Someone senior, agile coach who is good at managing stakeholders outside of the team as well. So they are here to create the role in the company, to understand the DNA of the company, and then create that role, evangelize this role with anybody in the company before you start hiring someone dedicated for that job. I found it very much more successful than going straight away and hiring a Scrum Master full time.
So sorry, what was the approach then? You sort of built up momentum by bringing in an agile coach and really sort of showing people what you could do.
Yeah.
And then you brought Scrum Master in, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So that role is not intuitive as much. So people who have worked in teams with Scrum Masters will understand what this role is about, how important it is. But for someone outside of an engineering team, it doesn't really make sense. It's very difficult to explain as well. So rather than trying to explain what this role is and trying to find a budget to hire someone, instead create a space for that role to be created. So bring someone with a lot of gravitas and experience who can communicate effectively with all the stakeholders, create that momentum, and just hire someone actually 2 months ago who is just doing that. So just highlighting basically what is missing at the moment. And once it becomes obvious, in same way as product owner, when it becomes obvious that we need someone to fill in that gap, then you've got the momentum. You've got then people telling you, well, should we hire a Scrum Master then next?
I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, we did it for a month with a contractor, and that turned out to be exceptional. And I think having that person for a short period of time on the contract was really useful as well, because I kind of constrained it and went, look, got this person, they'll give you as much time as you need, but they're going on this date. So that was very good to really force people. And yeah, that's, yeah, I suppose return for pound, that's possibly one of the best things I've done in the last couple of years.
And were they focused specifically on the engineering team, or did you paste them across the whole organization and be like, look what you could do if you thought about this methodology?
Yeah, it was, I mean, mainly focused on engineering. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, mainly focused on engineering, brought in because I was thinking back to like the early days where we would be on the floor in the apartment, we'd think of something and it'd be live by the evening. And then you realize, oh, we're a bit slower now. And we were still doing agile, but it was at the end of a bloody long waterfall. So it just felt as though we'd sort of lost our way. Okay, bring this person in, and they were great at just looking at the things that we couldn't see anymore because we were so sort of head down. But it also spread out to the rest of the business. A lot of learning around, they were really hot on the Cynefin framework, with the idea of understanding uncertainty and complexity and trying to address the fact that, okay, if you ask us to go and build this thing that's new and we haven't done before and nobody else has done before, you are not going to get a Gantt chart out of this. Well, you can, but it's going to be entirely fictional. And helping them and trying to find ways, I suppose, between the different people to, okay, there is this uncertainty. How do we keep you comfortable that we're not just going to go into a black hole and you don't know what's happening, whilst not asking for us, okay, so you know when it's going to be done by now then, do you? Because there's this big presentation on such and such a date. So yes, it did bleed out to the wider company as well, which is good.
So what was the follow-up, Chris? When that person left, did you hire someone else, or did you change the way you were working?
We changed the way we were working. The idea was, I mean, unfortunately, she went into full-time employment afterwards, which I was gutted about. She went back to being a developer, which is where she'd started. We still have the idea of bringing somebody in maybe another 6 months' time to give us another course correction. But I think part of it was making sure that the team lead spent a lot of time with them to really ingrain that, okay, it's a process change. we can see these things, we can draw them out. One of the main things was we were planning too early. We were planning too heavily and too early, because that was our response to, you've missed that deadline. Okay, well, let's plan a bit earlier then. And we still missed it. Let's plan a bit. So we end up planning weeks and weeks and sometimes months before we're going to go and actually do a thing. And we're still off. We hadn't considered that, well, you just can't estimate that thing because we're not looking at it in the right way. So the processes have changed so that we now do the planning much nearer the work, much more of a sort of focus on Scrumban, the idea of flow, reducing that sort of work in progress. But it's nice. I mean, they kind of left us with a hit list. Here's your short audit. Here are your quick wins. Here are your midterm wins. And here's the longer term wins that will cost you a little bit more to get in. But that was good. And we've largely stuck to that. I mean, you regress on anything once you kind of take your foot off the pedal. But yes, we are still feeling the positive effects from that. And that was 6 months ago.
Because it is a bit of a guacamole game, isn't it? So you put something
Always.
Today, and then that's going to come back 2 months later or 2 months later. And if you just are a person fixing that today, what guarantee do you have that? Yeah, because you're going to fix that, and a new problem will arise, and then you're going to fix this problem, the organizational problem. But then the same problem will come back with different justification. And I felt that having this role on a continuous basis just allows you to be agile in a way that you accept that problems will come, will go, you will address them. Otherwise, you fix it, but that's going to come back one day or the other in different shape or form.
Yeah, so I think that is maybe something we might do as we go past 25. Thanks, Lucas. Is maybe that's one of the hires that we need to do. But yeah, but that'll be interesting for the next discussion. What do we do next? People are dropping out now. Are we over time, Abby?
Yes, in theory we are, I'm afraid.
Okay.
But it's been a really good discussion, and I didn't want to stop you guys sharing your ideas with each other. So yes, I think if we can officially call it, if you're happy with that, Chris, and we will. Is that okay? Yeah,
I mean, this has been wonderful.
Yeah,
it's been
it
fab
has been brilliant.
To just connect with a load of people, hear some war stories. And if, just to do a sales pitch. If you want to come to the next one, that's the bit that I haven't done yet, and I really don't know anything about. So I will be speaking a lot less in that one. And that's the one where, I'm really looking forward to seeing what other people have done.
And that's on the 6th of December, I think we said, didn't we?
Yes,
you'll get an email anyway, yes. But the Monday, the 6th of December is the next installment, if you will. As I've already put in the chat, if you want the video from this afternoon, just find me on LinkedIn or send me an email. My email's in the chat, and I'll be able to get that sent to you when it's ready. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and joining, everyone. And thank you, Chris, for hosting. It's been brilliant and really, really good just to hear your thoughts and ideas and how you've made things work in your different areas of expertise. So yeah, thank you so much. And we will hopefully see you at the next one. Have a good afternoon.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Abby. Bye-bye.
Bye.